Alright, got a Honeywell / Generac generator that sometimes doesn't want to start, cranks once and then doesn't crank again. He says it goes out on overcrank and a few other things, but doesn't do it very often. Hasn't ever had the spark plugs changed, so we're going through and doing all the obvious stuff first. We're going to check the spark plugs, check the gap, and check the battery, check the compression, and see how everything checks out. Spark plugs are supposed to be at 30 thousandths of an inch, but as you can see, we're at 40 thousandths. Both of them are like that. This may not make a big difference, but why not just do what the factory tells you to do and make it a little simpler on yourself. Right there is the 20K with the 999cc. There's your valve clearances, spark plug, oil. The other thing is making sure that they have the full synthetic oil, which I forgot to ask him before he left. The choke here was all the way flush to that bottom, so I bent that up just a little bit to give a little bit of clearance. In the wintertime that can freeze and stick there. Got that taken care of. It is on natural gas. We are on natural gas. Now, one thing I did notice, that meter does not look like it's been upgraded to a higher capacity meter. But we have a step-down regulator right there. So it's the medium pressure gas system. That's ½ inch coming over to the unit, but it's a short path. It's less than 10 feet. Usually that's going to be doggone close to be the capacity. The thing you got to ask yourself is, it's been in for quite a while. And he's saying that the battery was changed, and that's when things kind of got stupid. And then one of our other guys came out and then replaced the control module, and that worked for a little while. I like to add a little bit of anti-seize to my threads, just a little wipe on the edge corner of the threads on both sides of that spark plug, and then I'll screw it in. They should probably be replaced, but I didn't know what I was going to be running into, so we didn't bring none with us. This is a Champion RC12YC. We got them adjusted to 30 thousandths. I just added a little bit there, nothing major. Anything's better than nothing, so don't get too wild with it, because if you do, I've seen it get down into the electrodes of the spark plug. We're going to do a compression test quick. We got the gas shut off. We're going to see what our cylinders come up with. Just about 200. That's where we're at. We're going to check the back one, see if we're in tolerance of each other. Do it one more time. Now, I noticed that battery does not sound all that wonderful. I'm going to point this out real quick too. This bracket makes everything much more difficult to get into. 2 10mm bolts there. Take this bracket out, discard it. I've not needed it. It's for the factory to mount the motor. It's just crap in your way. Okay, that made day and night difference. So here we are. Let's see what we get. Compression looks pretty good. We're right in there at 200 area. That's exactly what we had before. Some of our valves are probably fine. Now, like I said, that RPM there does not sound like it's up to speed. It sounds like it's going really slow. The battery test is the next thing I want to do. Now, the factory told us not to use these because they had a few of them blow up. Now, I've used it forever and never had an issue. The meter looks fairly decent compared to my analog. But generally you don't want to get below 11.2 under the load. So we're going to find out. 1001, 1009, and 10. Okay, now we want to watch our recovery rate, which we're going right back up. So the battery looks like it's probably fine. That was a 100 amp load. You don't want to go more than 10 seconds. And you know, this at least tells you a fast check whether or not the battery's got a decent charge. It doesn't tell you all the individual cells. If you're going to do that, you want to use your specific gravity, but unfortunately this is a maintenance-free battery. This is a specific gravity hydrometer. It tells you your state of charge, and you go through and you check in each individual cell. I prefer to have when you can actually maintain it, because you can see your water levels. When these things were first built, they had problems with them overcharging. These newer ones have got trickle chargers in them, and there's not such an issue. I started off with what I would kind of call Generation 1, the old tan ones, and they looked like this right here. Heck, even on these new ones, we still got brushes that'll stick. and in the wintertime you'll get frost on the slip rings. But on the newest versions they've came out with, they've added extra time of cranking to it to try to wear off that ice so that it'll start sensing. We're back to 13.3. Obviously we're charging, our battery circuit is. Alright, so we got the amp meter on there. We zeroed it out ahead of time. Okay, we're on the edge of the wire, just kind of holding it there. We're going to clamp onto it, and you can see that we're charging at about a 2 amp rate. See the positive there? It's pointing towards the load. Generally, since you flow from positive to negative, this would be drawing. But in this scenario here, we're actually pushing it back, so the power source is actually on the other side. So we would take the positive and go to this way, and you can see the charge rate is more closer to that 1.6, 1.7. The starter pulls about 90 amps area when it first kicks on, and you can watch that negative symbol change. So as you can see, when it's actually pulling, it goes the other direction. You can see the voltage bottom right corner. And there you have that. So far everything's looking pretty good. We're watching too to see whether or not our choke is opening and closing, which it was. And generally your solenoid, or your servo motor, I'm sorry, which is right down here, should be going back and forth a little bit when it first comes on. Let's go ahead and move it manually, and then we'll start over again with that. Okay, I just pulled this back to here, and it's going to push it that direction when it starts. But we got it to there. You've got to be careful, don't go pushing hard and snapping gears and everything else. Another thing to watch for is that wire sometimes can come unplugged down here on the bottom. And it's that little flat one back over here. And that, since it's dangling, it can fall out of there. Now we're going to watch and see if she responds to the cranking motion. Where is it? Here, let's just go to the top. You're going to see that solenoid, or that servo change. And it does work, does respond. So, and you can go through and ohm these out. The resistances are in the book. I'm not making this video for homeowners. About the most the homeowner should be doing is the spark plugs. Even then, if they're not familiar with motors and stuff, they shouldn't be doing this work. You could easily, if you would forget to shut the gas off, whatever, you could have a fire, explosion, burn your face off, die, whatever you want to call it. So there's my disclaimer. So this is for trained professionals and people with working knowledge of engines. Now, one other test you can do is voltage drop across your connections there. What we're doing is we're checking here on the clamp and on the center post of the battery. And we're going to be looking for 0.02 or less. This one's actually going down to 3 decimal points. And I've already checked it, but we're going to do it again to show you. And you're measuring across it. So we're going to hit the go button. .003. So we have no drop across the terminals whatsoever. And same thing with the positive side here. We did the same deal. And there's none there. So we know the battery connections are good. That's another thing that usually goes wrong. 90% of the time it's a battery or bad connections, which we're fine on both of those accounts. We're going to put spark plugs in and see how it runs. I mean, it could be just crappy spark plugs. Other than that, or we could have a sticking, like I said, the fuel solenoid or the fuel, I call it a regulator, but it's really not. It's basically like a plunger back here in the back. It's a little metal container with 2 bellows on it, and when the compression of the motor pulls, it sucks those bellows in and then lets the gas come through, because the gas won't come through until the motor starts cranking. The motor's compression intake stroke actually pulls the fuel into it and causes those bellows to open up. Alright, and then the other thing we need to check is our magnetos. I want to make sure we're getting a good strong spark. You gotta have spark, gotta have fuel, Gotta have rotation here. So we're gonna see what we got there. This may be a little hard to see. Seems to be firing pretty good there. That's not actual gap, but that neon light bulb will show you kind of an indication of what's going on. And also, I'm going to mention too, on the valve clearances and stuff, we're supposed to have 0.002 to 0.004 thousandths of an inch. That's with the cylinder top dead center. What you do is put your put a screwdriver in there, whatever you want. I use an Allen wrench. I put it on top of the cylinder. You rotate the crankshaft until she gets top dead center. You're going to go down, up, down, and then completely up, and that's going to be your top dead center. And that's when you check your valve clearances. I'm not going to say that checking compression is your only thing, but a lot of times you spend crap loads of time doing checks that they want you to do, and they're worthless, and they do nothing for you. Let's check the back one and see what we got back here. Seems to be spinning over a little faster. Now, like I said, I forgot to ask him what kind of oil. Hopefully he's running the 5W30 full synthetic oil in it. You need that oil to be as slick as can be in the wintertime when it gets colder. Now in the summertime, you may want to run up to a heavy 30, I think it's what they asked for originally. But generally I always ran, and our last company I was with, we ran 5W30 year round. And the weather here can be as cold as -5, -10. You know, sometimes it gets colder, but on average you're somewhere in that -5 to 0 at the coldest, most common of the year. And in the summer it can hit up to 100, but generally we're around the 90s. I mean, it just, nothing too extreme, but those are the areas, and your oil's going to be dictated by your climate that you're going to be working in. And the last thing we're going to check is our gas pressure. That's way back here in the back. Pain in the butt to get to. You got to take these 10mm bolts off here and here. That's the way I'm going to do it to make it easier on myself. There's the fangoidled mess there, yanked it out. I'm telling you, if you don't have a small drill, you're crazy. I got an 18 volt, never use it. A swivel with a 10mm socket or whatever we need, because there's 7, 8, 10 are the most common ones on the generator. That port there at the top is your incoming pressure. Now you can have too high a pressure and that solenoid won't open, which it's got to be well over 13 plus inches. And then your actual motor's pressure is going to be right there. Now they want somewhere, I thought, between 5 and 6 incoming. We'll need to take a look. I am not doing generators near what I used to do. I was doing several a week before, and when I came here, we just don't do a lot of them. So I may need to take a peek here and see what the gas pressure should be. Alright, we are connected to the engine side of things, and we've got her zeroed out right now. Boom. And we're going to crank it over. Didn't start up as fast as I wanted. And I'll tell you another thing, make sure you have your hearing protection. I now have tinnitus. I don't know if it's from the generators, but I didn't think it was that loud. And it did seem to happen more after I started running these non-stop. So make sure you use hearing protection. We're going to watch that servo there do its thing too. Now once this thing is ran and it's warm, it's going to start a lot easier. So you've got to do all those checks while the engine's still cold. I don't know if you heard that or not, but it had a bog down there after it started to run, and sometimes that's that thing I was telling you about as far as that meter clamping down. I wasn't watching my fuel gauge, unfortunately, when it did it, but we'll see if we can get it to do it again. Here's that fuel regulator that I was telling you about. Inside that big old pot belly there, that circular thing, there's a bellows in there with basically it's like got a hinge point, and when that sucks in, that bellows rotates like this, and so the bellows are here where my thumb and fingers are, and this right here is like the plunger up top, so when it sucks in on it, whoosh, opens up and lets the fuel through, and when the engine stops pumping, it goes shut. We're going to check incoming pressure before all that, so we got our tap on there, and we're going to try it there real quick. Right now she's starting up really smooth and nice. The oil's hot, and you know, you can tell a huge difference. I had some sputters. You heard us pop there for one time, and you know, we may need to check the valves, but honestly it's probably something fuel related. But at this point we pretty well went through everything. We could check the codes here, go into history. Now all these are going to be a little different. We're going to alarm log, RPM sense loss, inspect battery. That's a timer. Wow. So really, look, we don't even really have any codes in here. So you've only had one RPM sense on these generators. That's, to me, not a big deal. Inspect battery don't mean jack squat. RPM, now that happened back on last month or month and a half ago. It happened at 12 o'clock. That happened when probably was set up for a test, I bet you. But here's your run log. Manual. Every time I started it, it kept track of that. Every time I started it. It'll say manual or auto. It'll say exercise. There's exercise. And then on the exercise, you can see it started at 12 o'clock and it stopped automatically at 12:12. So there's 12-minute run time. So you can see through here that it's been exercising fine. So here's the problem. You're not finding, so there's utility loss. Utility loss 9418 at 11:22, and it stopped automatically. So it came on at 11:22 and finished up at 11:39. This will kind of tell us when they may have changed the control board, because I don't think they marked it. Now we're repeating. So yeah, there's 50 of them. So last time, and every time I run this manual, you're losing old stuff. The oldest one is getting lost. So we've not had but one failure back, you know, since at least June. This makes it very difficult to find what's going on. All right, our incoming gas pressure's at 8. Let's see what it does when we start. So we can get it to hold focus. At this point where we're at, I'm going to say our regulators and everything in our gas meter is working correctly. But it's just, like I said, if there's something sticking in between, there's no way to really know. Right now everything looks good. Here's something to consider too when you're working on generators if you're wanting to get into it. The school, or Generac, wants you to use their books, and they want you to follow through process by process by process. So I've been just checking all the obvious things, but they actually have a checklist of what they want to do. And when it's under warranty, you got to show what you had for every test and how you came to the conclusion that you got. Well, something to keep in mind is it's a halfway decent day. It's a little cloudy. It's not too bad out here temperature-wise, probably about 70. But man, when it's time to be raining and cold, snow flying, dark, you name it, have fun. I have these manuals also on a tablet, but to me, I like the book best. Like generator shuts down on under voltage. Well, let's go ahead and check and see what it wants me to check for RPM sense. The RPM sense is done off of the magnetos, and usually that is, gosh, I can't remember if it's the 18 wire. Here's the thing you got to keep in mind too. If you ain't doing these things every day, you will forget, and you will need to go back to your book. I am doing heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, generators, cook equipment, you name it. I mean, we do way more things than what a normal generator guy that's just maybe electrician or something does. So we do a lot of different things, and it's hard to remember it all, and especially when you haven't done it for 8 months. I think I went through the class. Yeah, I went to the class on the end of January. It was a 3-day class. The guy we had was a master generator guy, master level. He was a car mechanic before and did a pretty good job. I went to the factory several times, and this class they had down there was really good. So we're going to go back in here in our codes, and the only code I've got was RPM sense. Yeah, RPM sense loss. So let's look that up. RPM sense loss. That didn't say no crank, over crank, or anything else, but that's the only one I got. I think he had an over crank once, but if it don't, RPM sense loss means it sensed it, then it lost it. This test is going to be while it's cranking, so I'm going to shut the fuel back off. We're set up there on the stud 18 wire and chassis ground, which that shouldn't come off because it's a fluke and they're great, right? And we're going to lock our range in here, and let's see what she does when we are cranking. Alright, 4 and 5 voltage area. And you come over to here, 3 to 6 volts during cranking. So like I said, we've got everything working. This is where you're going to play heck trying to find what is wrong with this thing, because it's working. And so at this point, I'm going to call the owner's son and explain to him what I found and kind of just see what he wants me to do next, because there's not a whole lot I can do other than check the valves. I don't think we're going to have a problem. She's running really super smooth. Our voltages are great. Our RPMs are great. Everything's great. And kind of go from there. Otherwise, you could spend all day here tearing into it. What I found in the past, and I've created more problems than what I fixed, is once it's working and it's fine, you don't want to spend too much time on it, because you will just be chasing the rabbit down the hole until the fox gets you by the tail, and that ain't good. Now under battery replacement, group 26R 12 volt 525 minimum. Alright, under the 20, actually all of the generators with Evolution, 525 cold cranking minimum, group 26. This is group 26, but at 500 makes me wonder, is that 500 cold cranking? But he said he hadn't had no problems with it in the cold weather, which kind of is odd. He said all these problems happened shortly after changing the battery. That's what's kind of funny. Us changing the spark plugs gap a little bit might make a little bit of a difference. But like I said, it's not doing it every time. I'm kind of at a loss right now, and probably going to have to just wrap it up and wait till something 100% fails. As much as I hate to say it, I don't know what else to do. If it ain't broke, can't fix it. I mean, it's obviously got issues, but I'm not able to catch what exactly it was doing. Alright, so we're out of video there. What I kind of found at the end there was the generator was having its problems when it was going into exercise. They weren't having a problem when the power went out. It always seemed to start and run. What I narrowed it down to was this has a quiet mode. I think it's worthless. I want to see that generator get hot, boil off any moisture that's in the oil, and do its thing. And I always turn that off. When it goes into that slow mode, they run rough and they run like crap. And so I always switch them to normal mode. I switched it to that. I went through and checked his transfer switch, tested it back and forth. It was a whole house transfer. Everything worked perfect. As I said 20 times in the video, when it doesn't act up, it's really hard to fix something, and this is one of the frustrating things with the generators. I'd like to thank all of my new subscribers. I'm sorry this video is so long. It's at least 30 minutes. That's the whole thing. You sit there and run through all those tests, and it's very time consuming. So if you like the video, please like, subscribe, and give it a thumbs up, and we'll catch you on the next one.